Hello, everyone. I'm so excited today to have Leslie Tagorda with me. And so we're talking about cosmic clarity. And that's my whole thing, right? We have choice when we understand what's important to us, who we are on a deep level, then we can actually have the life we want, be authentic, and really live in alignment because it's all patterns from our childhood, from our past. And astrology is one of these amazing tools that helps us to do that. And I really love Leslie's take on astrology, and that's why I thought it was really important to have her come on today and just talk about some of those differences. I love her idea of how we have more inclusive language and how we can really look at the archetypes. One of the tools I use is meditation, and we talk about archetypes in there. And then your ability to break it down so clearly and how we can then build on that to use it for our branding for our business. And you have so much patience. I've done the course once, I'm going to do it again. So I really love your ability to really hold the space and um, just be so present with people. And the other thing I do is Enneagram and
Yeah.
about presence. So I just love how you do that. And apologies for the tech issues today. I will upload this to Facebook and YouTube for those that were looking for it on YouTube. So,
Oh,
Leslie,
hi. Well, thank you so much, Robin, for hosting this conversation because, I love to talk about astrology and like when we look from this idea of cosmic psych or cosmic clarity, there's so many ways that we can look at it. And so it really just, I have so much gratitude for you being so drawn to this work, like with Enneagram, with astrology, like most of us who are listening here, we're star workers and somehow like we're not just working with the light of the stars, we're working literally with the stars and the sacred geometry that comes from the astrology. So I love hearing that you were so drawn to the way that I like looking at astrology. You were mentioning earlier that with the astrology, just the way that I look at astrology tends to be more expansive, tends to be more inclusive, because for somebody like me, like growing up when I was looking at astrology, a lot of like astrologers and a lot of like some of the traditional astrology, those definitions felt like really heavy, felt really constrictive, and it didn't feel like it could adequately describe me and my life experience. And so, as I really grew into like developing my astrological language, I was always looking at how can we expand the symbolism to really put the power back into our hands.
yeah, that's amazing because I think so much comes from our life experience and how then we have that view and that way of looking at the world. And yeah, so you're showing that in how you've expanded it.
Yeah, I love what you talk about these patterns that come from our life experience, whether this is our current life experience or maybe some karmic life experiences from the past. You have a big signature in your chart with Uranus opposite Chiron, which you like. It's almost exact to the minute. It is like the signature of the cycle breaker. Ultimately, when we're looking at these patterns, and even when we're looking at our astrology, these lived experiences, many of us have come from lived experiences that have made it so that we have to diminish our light, diminished our sense of self. We had to conform and fit into boxes because we didn't fit neatly into the expectations of our culture, our family, our society. And so that's why, like, when we come back to astrology and we're getting like this cosmic clarity, so much of I imagine your work and my work is really about reframing some of this conditioning that we learned that we were too much or should be this or should do that, or just all of those things that we really have to spend a lot of our lifetime opening that up, breaking through, and then redefining who we want to be.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we talk about with the Enneagram, right? We're in the box of personality. So how do we get out of it?
Yeah.
Um, what I dislike is the some of the memes and the way it becomes too superficial, and that's why I
Mm-hmm.
think we're so aligned because it's about going deeper. It's not the yes, I can know my type, and that makes us more of that type. Same with I'm a Libra, so I'm gonna use that as an excuse not to use my free will to be
Yeah.
different. And I had goosebumps because yes, that's very much what I want to do and have done in my life. I, grew up very challenging circumstances, had cancer, just so many challenges in my life. And that's why my main company name is A Life of Choice, because we have
Mhm.
choice no matter what.
When I look at your chart and as you're speaking those words, a life of choice, and just like you didn't need to tell me that you came from a challenging like I could see it so much in our chart, but part of the beauty and the gifts of those challenges is that if we're not being the victim and making excuses to behave in like stuck ways, like that's essentially what you were talking about. Like, I know my type, so I'm going to make an excuse and just live in this and just be the victim of my type. No, 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 no. It's really about like, okay, I have these challenges. Why did life give me these challenges? What are the opportunities and the strengths and the growth that I'm supposed to now walk away from? And so what I've noticed with so many of the clients that I love working with, they're like, I had a challenge in my life. I want to reframe what this challenge is to really get to the hidden gem, the hidden key of what this is. And again, when I was talking about your chart with Chiron, which in our natal charts looks like a little key, and he's called the wounded healer, and his process is to turn challenges into purpose. Okay. And then Uranus, who is the awakener, the revolutionary, who's here to teach us how to break through. There's an intergenerational pattern for people born in like the 50s through the 80s that have this Uranus Chiron opposition in the sky. And like you have it very, very tight. And Chiron is in the ninth house in the sign of Aquarius. And so when we look at an astrological chart, it's not just our sun sign. You're not just a Libra, like your sun is in Libra, it's in the fifth house. It has all of these aspects. It has a trine to Chiron, like that deepens that zone of genius that the sun represents. But Chiron in the ninth house really shows us that lifelong question, that life, some people call this like the devil, like when we're like, oh, we're getting ready to up level, the same devil returns. It's
Mhm.
not really a devil, it's a friend. It's the friend that maybe we don't recognize its friendship, but it's been walking with us our path our entire life. And it shifts and it changes as we, work on one level, then it expands to another level. And every time this old friend, this old devil comes back, it shows us that we're ready to take that next big leap. And
Yeah.
so, right, like you've seen that like over and over with your clients, right?
Yeah, and the tech issues, right? It's like just before you're going to do something different and step up, it's like for me, it's the tech issues or it's something physical.
Yeah,
And when I first trained to teach the meditation, we have to learn to shift people's vibration.
yeah.
And I felt so sick, thought I was going to throw up.
Yeah, but that's like the old devil showing up, right? Because probably being sick was, in a spiritual term, like I'm not a medical professional. Please don't like let's just put that as a caveat. But like on a symbolic and like a metaphysical level, that might have been a coping mechanism for you growing up,
Yes,
right? That
moms too. So that pattern of
yeah.
loyalty to her, at which I had to unravel because no, I don't have to live that life of being sick, after
Yeah.
illness. And it's like, no, I can live.
Your moon in and all of your packed fourth house, you have like Venus and Pluto and Jupiter and the moon and Mercury all tightly together in the fourth house. And that really represents this kind of like intergenerational. So we can see how it this didn't start with your mom.
No, absolutely.
And then you having the cycle breaker pattern also, this goes deep. And so in your life of choice, you're really helping your people find their success and like get out of obligation and get out of duty by breaking these long systems and chains of ancestral trauma or what that might be. But coming back to the name of your business, a life of choice, when we think about like some of the freedom archetypes, like Aquarius, is it free to be like unique and different? Am I free to be different from the rest of my culture and society? Aries is like, is it free to be me? Sagittarius, is it free to have my own beliefs? And so, with your Chiron in the house of Sagittarius, the ninth house in Aquarius, you're constantly battling it. Your lifelong question, your lifelong quest is it safe to be different? And is it safe to have different beliefs?
Hmm. Absolutely. Like when I finally realized I was queer, like that was a huge thing for me because I've been so buried and it was kind of the last piece of my healing around the cancer.
Mm,
People are kind of shocked on my story because it's like I felt it in my body
yeah.
and I felt like this shift in my perspective. And it was like I knew, and then everything in my life made sense because I always felt different, but I thought it was the poverty, the abuse, all these different things. And it was like, yes, and there's this because you couldn't own your own sexuality because of the abuse and these other ways of looking at the world. And it took a while to even talk about it with people.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Robin, thank you for sharing that with me. Like, that is such a revelation, and that's such a beautiful part of your story. And that's why I think that Chiron, like when we're looking at our not just like our brand and our leadership, because like ultimately, like the way that I look at astrology is like, how do we present ourselves in the world? Especially when you've had a challenging lifestyle and like you don't have role models about like how you could present yourself in the highest possibilities. And so it takes so much reframing. But then coming back to Chiron really helps us inform our how we're mentoring others and how we're teaching and creating our offers in our business, because ultimately all those questions that you've been healing your entire life, Chiron the wounded healer can't heal in himself but can heal in others, but he can't heal in himself, right? It's that friend, that piece of us that is always going to be not perfect enough, but
Mm.
we befriend it and we see the gifts of it. And then we're able to mentor and teach and share these gifts of our so-called healing with others. So you help others really come to terms with their true identities and that freedom to be different, freedom to believe.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other tools I use, the map, helps us to see. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs and they have these growth motivators that help them to be independent and want that freedom. And at the same time, and I think astrology also helps with this, is
Yeah.
helping to see when it's too much, when we the shiny object and yes, we all love to learn, but are we actually integrating? And that's another piece I like about your work because it's then, okay, yes, this is who I am and these are the influences, and then how do I integrate it into my life and my business?
Yeah, because I think the application, like we're human beings and we live on this physical earth. We need to pay our bills. We need to like accomplish things. And we don't have to like the should part, but we still need to apply things. We can't just have all this information in our head and not live it. And so when I think about astrology, I want people to harness astrology as a tool, whether this is to be able to make their mark and make an impression in the world through their leadership, make an impact, or even just like to help their communities, because we're all being called to this place of leadership, knowing who we are, knowing what we are here to contribute, and actually doing something about it instead of just talking about it.
Yeah, like without the action, what changes?
Exactly.
Theory. And, it's the same with other esoteric kind of things. Yes, we can, when we're by ourselves, it's great. But when we actually have to be with people and hold that positioning and that place of connection without judgment. And I think astrology, along with the things that I do, help to do that, to bring in that neutral language and that way of just seeing, yeah, these are just differences and we need all of them, right? That's the beauty, is having those different perspectives, because what I see is different from what you see, and where those gaps and what needs healing in people. And we attract different people. So those will overlap too, but there's that place of who we resonate with energetically that people might not understand. But as you say, light workers, we know that that's part of it.
Mm, so beautiful. I'm curious, Robin, how, because you have these different modalities, and of course you have lots of different modalities because you have so much Virgo in your chart. All like the Virgos, they love all of their toolbox. They want to like pull out their different tools whenever they need it. Um, but I'm curious how you've learned how to weave some of like the Astrobrand astrology dialect into your work.
Yeah, I think it's like you say, the pattern breaker. And so I do like to talk about that, how we can be different, how we can choose, reframe, and just give a different perspective. So when someone says something, and have you thought about it from this perspective? Like someone, like there's posts on Facebook where it's just a copy and paste thing about if you've lost someone from cancer. And to me, it feels kind of hollow. And the person responded in saying, well, that's because maybe it's too close to you or it brings up that memory. And it doesn't for me. I've done a lot of work around it, and I don't feel that anymore. I have integrated the experience. To me, it's about, is that really helping? Is that really, maybe if it's more personal, I think we can detach. There's so much othering, and, we're different instead of like, where's the emotion? Where's the feeling with that? And I
Yeah.
think that's part of it for me with the astrogram, like that feeling around it, and being able to say, you know, maybe there's someone you're in connection with that this caused this to, you want to do it, but we can remember them, we can talk about it in a different way. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
That's so, and I look at your chart. Of course, I have your chart in front of me as you're talking, and like that, your Cancer rising shines through, right? And then when we think about like in our leadership and how we make a mark, art, that presence that you were talking about in the world, when we can really embody that rising sign, the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon from the time and the place on this beautiful earth that you took your first breath, that rising sign is like such an important piece of our chart that we need to learn to step into, like lead from that place. And so you're setting a beautiful example of how you're already initiating and leading from this place of like, well, what does that feel like? What is the sensitivity? Like, how are we going to connect to this emotion? Because that's what Cancer does so beautifully. It's such a sensitive emotional energy that often doesn't get seen as for its full leadership potential. But Jupiter is going to be going through Cancer very soon, starting next week, when Asher Brown 101 starts. And then with your Cancer energy, it's like we're reframing the value of the emotional labor and the value of contribution of the emotional labor of the Cancer archetype, because we need this work in the world right now.
And that's why I love, just that reframing that you've done. And that's helped me a lot with, when I think about Astro Brand because, and the business too, because yeah, maybe I didn't think about saying it outright before. I mean, I would talk about it in my cancer journey of how that was the thing that really opened me up was taking that time, 6 months on the sofa, going deep, allowing that Pandora's box of emotions to come out that I'd pushed down for so many
Yeah.
years because I just needed to survive.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the feeling. And yeah, to feel safe to be able to do that finally over time and still feeling that vulnerability. Recently, I was at a session in Calgary with a group with my speaking mentor, and I decided to really push the envelope and talk about something I'd never spoken about before. And it was so freeing because being in the emotion, being able to tell this story that impacted people
Yeah.
just so empowering in our leadership. And yes, to see the beauty in all of the signs and all the parts of us. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I love.
That's some courageous compassion there, right, Robin? Living example of courageous compassion.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's when we have these different tools, it helps us to take that next step of vulnerability into who we are because it does take courage. It
Yeah.
does take compassion. And I would say that's the biggest thing in the Enneagram too is really having compassion for ourselves because we
Yes.
have it for others. And what about ourselves? We tend to put ourselves last. And that was also my story with cancer. I was doing everything for everyone else and where was me in the occasion. So I had to learn that self first positioning of
Yeah.
taking care of myself.
So much of your chart goes back to like that the fourth house. So when we're looking at a natal chart, also not only are we our sun sign, but it looks like a pie with 12 different slices. And each of these slices represents an area of our life or our business. And the fourth house exists at the very bottom of the pie. And that house is also, it's like Cancer's natural house. And you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 planets there, including your moon sign. And so, in this lifetime, you were meant to learn emotional security and
Mhm.
to cultivate it and nurture it, not just for yourself, but for others. And so, in a way, in your business, and I'm not exactly sure how your business is set up, but I can see that your customers really see you as this kind of like divine nurturer kind of a person who creates that safe space for people to soften up, to be able to then go deep. Because if we're not able to soften up, if we're not able to feel safe enough to open up to do this kind of transformational work, you can't force it. It's not going to happen if we're closed off and like, just trying in protection mode. That softness creates that vulnerability, creates that openness that allows us then to do the deep transformation work. And so that's the emotional labor of Cancer, the
Yeah,
sign.
yeah, definitely that safety. And, it's interesting how all these things overlap because I also do karmic numerology and I'm a six there, six in the Enneagram. We're all about safety. And
Isn't it beautiful how all these pathways take you like to the same destination?
Exactly. And that's my biggest thing is wanting people to feel safe so that they can go there. And uh, yeah, it just beautifully dovetails all together.
Yeah. So I wonder how does astrology help you become a better Enneagram practitioner?
I like what you were saying about the overlap, first of all.
Yeah.
I think that really helps to bring some context and also that softening. Because what I found is I usually do the motivational map and the Enneagram with people. And I also like to, and I need their birth date for the numerology if I'm doing that. So I can also look at that.
Yeah.
So it really gives me an overall big picture. And then with the map, it's less uh, confrontative, I guess, in some way. Like it feels a bit safer because I'm just looking at how do I feel about things? What motivates me? What drives my behavior?
Mm,
And so we start to see where there might be some conflicts within us or how we like our communication styles, how open to change we are, things like that. So it helps to set that picture. And then I can talk about how those other things kind of feed into it
mm,
and then go deeper. And with the Enneagram work, if we go into the shadow work, which is the parts of ourselves that we've said, I don't want to look at that, that often gives a clue too. And so one of the examples I give is jealousy. Who wants to
mm,
feel jealous? No one.
mm.
So we say, go away, just like you said, that thing that kind of comes along with us. And then how can I actually talk to it? See what the original intention is and
Yeah.
then integrate that so the voice can be present instead of feeling like it's not being heard.
Oh yeah.
Art, that's the same thing, right? Those parts of ourselves that aren't being heard.
Mm. Yeah, the jealousy and compare, like to me, jealousy, for me personally, jealousy is an expression of comparisonitis. And like that's something that I've worked through in my entire life, like not knowing who I am simply because I'm so many mixed identities that like I never had a place where I truly belonged. And so I would always compare myself, like, how can I be more like other people? How can I fit in here? And so that the comparison, the conformity, and then ultimately, like the jealousy at its kind of the lowest format of it. But when I started to befriend my jealousy and understanding what my jealousy wanted me to know, my jealousy was simply saying, oh, you can have that too. That's
Yeah,
all it was telling me.
desire. Yeah, I desire that. So
Yeah.
same idea, but it was, yeah, that this is what I desire or this is what I can have. And or maybe not right now, but depending what the situation is, but it is
Yeah.
something that our heart wants.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that so much. Um, I wonder, like for your people and your community, because you took my class, the Astro Brand 101, back in March, and I'm offering this class again coming up, and it's really, of course, it's about astrology and it's about looking and learning how to read our natal charts. And I think your audience could learn so much about themselves and start to reframe bits and parts of themselves, learn how to take care of some of their needs based on their moon sign, seeing their gifts from their sun sign, and knowing how they're supposed to take lead, initiate from their rising sign. Do you think this would be a good fit for them?
Absolutely. I'm taking it again for anyone that's interested, just because the Q&A is so helpful because yes, we can, you give us really good guidance on how to figure everything out instead of just, clicking on Astrodent and just having a chart. But what
Yeah.
does it mean? And going into the symbolism, I thought was really powerful because then you have that reframe of what that means. So it takes us beyond that kind of more limited thinking,
Yeah.
and then it helps with whether it's your personal or your business, and both. If you have both, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of entrepreneurs that listen in, then it helps you in those areas that really, what is those expression
Yeah.
things that are causing me some grief? And so I think it's just another piece that can help us for ourselves and even their understanding with clients.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really encourage it because such an amazing deal, and I really am grateful that you're teaching it for a second time this year because I know you only normally do it once a year. And
Yeah.
it's great to see it online, but to actually have someone there when you're actually going through it. Like for me, a lot of courses I'm not doing anymore unless there's a live component and I can fit it into my schedule because I'm not integrating it.
Yeah, I find it myself really hard time to watch replays, although there will be replays available. You can
Yes.
ask your questions ahead of time if you need to. And one of the things that I want to bring up also, it's like because your people might already know how to read their natal chart. Right. And so even if I have a lot of clients that are already professional astrologers and they still come to me and they still come to this class because they know that we're going to really blast open some of the symbolism and like liberate it so that it doesn't feel so oppressive and restrictive and like you're this one way. That's not what my astrology is about. But also like then how to expand it, how to start to now see the symbolism for not just like self-awareness and self-identity, but then also like leadership. Like we're all here to lead. And maybe society told you that leader only looks one way, but that's not true. We know that Robin is here to lead by nurturing and cultivating and like helping people like accept their choices and who they want to become. And for me, with my Gemini rising, I lead by asking questions and sharing stories and speaking. So there's all these different ways of leadership. And so when we know our chart in that from that perspective, from that lens, we can look at astrology for leadership and our business and how we make a mark in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I was going to say too, to really, because when we talk about things, it's the same with the Enneagram. Yeah, I can talk to them on that kind of surfacey thing, but it feels flat. When
Mm-hmm.
I have my own stories to tell, when I can give different words, because it's not just the you are this. It's like this is the energy around it, the archetype. Like for the type two is kind of that nurturing figure. And I think about that as that really great, the the correct mothering energy that we need for ourselves.
Yes.
And so I love that kind of way of helping people to see that it doesn't have to be this kind of cut and dried cookie cutter. That's the other,
Mm-hmm.
it, it gets us out of the cookie cutter because we're expansive by all these aspects, and it helps to bring that out in our language.
Beautiful. I love that. Well, I'm really excited that you're going to be joining us again for Astro Brand 101. And I wonder, if your people need to join.
Only $47, like it's a deal. And yes, it's fast paced, but like Leslie said, there are recordings and you can go back over it and pop in and out as you need to. But the lessons are really clearly laid out. And yeah, I just think it's something that people would want to do before next year.
Absolutely. To get clarity, remember, to get your
Yes.
cosmic clarity. One way to look at the natal chart is just like, what did your soul choose to explore in this lifetime? And your natal chart, it's even though it's like a map, it evolves with you. The story keeps on unfolding. So I really hope that your people, I know you have a link for everyone.
Yes, I'll be posting a link and I will be posting this back on different social medias for people that are looking for it. It'll be on YouTube. I'll put it on Instagram, probably even Blue Sky. And
Oh,
X. I don't go on to X that much anymore. When I do, I put something positive to, but Blue Sky is kind of opening up and there's kind of a nice vibe on there. So I've been on there a bit as well.
Oh, fun. I haven't explored Blue Sky too much, but I definitely need to get in there. But yeah, Astro Brand 101 It's really the gateway into my entire method. I have a lot of curriculum on how to find your vision and your purpose, your voice, your style. It's an entire suite of looking at astrology, and the 101 course is really the gateway. So I make sure that you are able to read and understand your chart before we start doing like the deep dives into like interpretation. So we'll be starting when Jupiter moves into Cancer on June 9th, and it's a 5-day course. I live in San Francisco, so it's going to be Pacific time at 2 p.m. Pacific every day. We go for about I try to finish the teachings all within the hour. So if you have to go, but like people have been known to stay for like 2.5 hours. We're just talking and asking questions, and it's so much fun. You don't have to stay the entire time, but know that like that's just what happens. And yeah, it'll be a 5-day course. Replays are available, and we'll have a little community for about 3 months, just so people can ask questions and connect. And I know you've made some connections already in the community with other
They're a
Canadians.
program teacher, and yeah, there's a few different connections. So yeah, it's really fun. And who knows who you might meet.
I know I love when that happens. I just love it when my students meet and connect and collaborate.
Yeah, you have a lovely community. I think everyone's so heart-centered in it, and because of that expansive nature of it. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for today. I really
Yes.
appreciated you coming on and helping to share about myself and your work. And I hope to see people next week in Astro Brand 101.
Yes. So sign up with Robin's link and we'll see you there. Thank you for having me, Robin. This was so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.